Hey, how's it going, everybody? Shaun here for another edition of Shaun Solo. Today I want to talk about The Witcher 3. I just recently finished it, maybe like 2 or 3 days ago. Finally made it my way through it. A few months ago I actually did kind of a thoughts and impressions video, kind of my early impressions of the game and some of my feelings about it. So if you watch that video, or listen to it rather, because it was just audio, some of these things might be a little redundant, I guess, right? But there's going to be a lot of spoilers. The reason why I'm not kind of doing a more formal one, I suppose, because I have a lot of thoughts and a lot of opinions, and I kind of just want to be able to ramble, and just talk, and just give my honest opinion and my honest critique in a less formalized way, even those aren't very formal. But just, I don't know, save myself some time, I suppose. You know, I could spend a half hour doing this, or I could spend 2 hours, doing a 12-minute video. So, I don't know. Whatever. But anyways, The Witcher 3 just finished it. Just up front, really, really enjoyed that game. Probably one of my favorite games to come out in a long time. And I'm not, going into The Witcher 3, I'm not like a huge fan of The Witcher in general. I like the games. I like the first one well enough. Like, it's a decent game that had a lot of flaws and was kind of silly in a lot of ways that are maybe even a little bit gross. Because the lot of like sexual stuff in the Witcher series is a little at its most awkward in the first one, and it's kind of as the series has gone on to the third one, like it's matured and it's changed, and it's not like more responsible, because I don't think they really owe it to anybody to be more responsible, but I think it's just a much more adult take on kind of love and sex and relationships and stuff like that, dealing with it in a video game. Probably the most mature dealing with it that I've seen ever in The Witcher 3. The Witcher 2 is a little bit better in terms of sexual politics and agency and stuff like that, and then The Witcher 3 is a very like nuanced kind of take on that kind of stuff, like sexuality and relationships and whatnot, like I said. But, like, that was in the game, CD Projekt Red is always good because they release the games and then they are always patching, they're always updating, they're very consistent that way. They even go back and, like, full cloth, like, fix their broken games. The Witcher 1, when it first came out, was kind of a broken game. And then, like, a year or so later, maybe 2 years later, they came out with the Enhanced Edition with fixed, like, the vast majority of like mechanical problems the game had. It's a very similar thing happened in Witcher 2. About a year or so after its release, they came out with like the enhanced edition for Witcher 2, which included like a tutorial area and kind of leveled out the difficulty level, because it was a really kind of intimidating game to get into because it didn't hold your hand. And even with like the added on training areas and stuff like that, it still doesn't hold your hand, because it's very similar to the way The Witcher 3 did it. The Witcher 3 just had it built into the game, but they have like a tutorial area, but that's it. You're not getting, it doesn't like kind of dole it out organically. It feels like, well, here is very specifically a training area, and we're going to tell you all the mechanics right now, right up front, and then it's up to you to remember how to use them all. Which is kind of a bummer, because some of those things don't become applicable until way later in the game, and it's easy to forget what you were doing, especially with the games being as long as they are, especially The Witcher 3. If I had a complaint about like how they structured like introducing mechanics and stuff like that, it would be that for The Witcher 3. But like it's not so gross of a thing that I like this should deter you from playing the game. While it has a decent challenge, Witcher 3 has an easy mode that is just as enjoyable for different reasons. Like if you just want to feel empowered and you want to just kind of see the quest lines and just enjoy like the game on that level, like for exploration and story and characters and stuff like that, like I would totally say go easy mode. I played it on normal myself, but I don't like it's one of those things like if I ever play it again, which I actually might, and I'll get more into that later. But I actually might, just because I want to enjoy the story and the world and kind of just do whatever the fuck I want and not really worry about kind of normal game penalty stuff. I just kind of want to breeze through it and enjoy it and explore the world. I did that on my first playthrough. I think I ended up about almost 150 hours. So that should give you a good a good idea of like how much exploration I did. And the thing about that, like, and I did it over a few months. Like, you know, I was not mainlining this game and just playing it like crazy every day. Like I said in my last video, when I talked about The Witcher 3, I kind of would dip in, dip out. You know, sometimes I'd go like a week or two without even playing it at all. But the game was always a joy to come back to. And every time I would take long stretches off from the game, like, I would always come back to it and be like, oh god, it's so good. So that actually might have helped my enjoyment a little bit, because it never got stale, it never felt repetitive or redundant. Which is something that happens, I think, when you mainline these kind of big, sprawling open-world RPGs. Everything from Skyrim to Dragon Age Inquisition. I got really bored of Dragon Age Inquisition, but I played like 50 hours of it within like a week and a half. And I think it actually hurt my time, my experience with it, because I actually... You know, I was just kind of craving something to play, and then I decided to go back to Dragon Age Inquisition, like, the day after I finished Witcher 3, because I was like, oh, I just want to keep kind of playing fantasy RPG stuff, and I did find myself kind of enjoying the game a little bit more. I wasn't as bored, I suppose, even though it's kind of got, like... It's still silly to me, the Dragon Age Inquisition's, like, idea of, like, worlds and open world is, like... Almost like the Star Wars like philosophy of like, here's an ice planet, here's a water planet, here's a mountain planet. You know what I mean? Like, here's a desert planet. Like, it's always kind of, that kind of stuff is, you know, I don't know, it's a little silly. I understand, like, it's a quick way to add variety and stuff like that, but it never feels organic, it never feels connected. And that, going back to The Witcher 3, The Witcher 3 has a very cohesive, kind of progressive world that all feels logical. Now, while... in the same way that Dragon Age Inquisition has it, there's a larger world map, and you're kind of sequestered to these little areas that, well, not little, but these areas that the people have, like, meticulously crafted. So you're not, like, totally connected in a way. Like, I can't go from one kind of game area to another one organically by just traveling, kind of like Skyrim or something like that. But all, like, the contained things, they feel natural, they feel organic. They all have a continuity to them that I appreciated, especially playing the way I do. And when I do that, when I play games like this, I tend to do a lot, like I said, like a lot of exploring. I go on foot a lot, or I'll ride my horse around. I don't fast travel very often. Usually towards the end of a game, I'll start like fast traveling a lot, because I'm like, oh, all right, well, I'm just kind of ramping up. I want to see what the story is and get finished with the game. And but most of the time I spend just walking around and traversing and not really being concerned so much about getting to my next destination, because for me it's about the journey, and I think that is, in broad way to put it, in large context, is that is really at the heart of The Witcher 3. The Witcher 3 is about the journey rather than the destination. That's not to say that the destination isn't satisfying or entertaining or good, because I actually think the narrative in The Witcher is fantastic. And I'll talk about that a little bit more down the line here. I just want to talk about the game mechanics. But yeah, so like, it's always a joy to explore this world, and it all makes sense, and you always never feel lost. Like, there's always a problem I have with some of these types of games about orientation and like where I am. And a lot of that is because sometimes it just doesn't make a ton of like logical sense in terms of from one place to the next. I never felt that with The Witcher. Like, I felt everything was like connected in a way that made complete sense. Everything is traversable. You can pretty much go anywhere. And I just really appreciated that. It just shows you just like the level of work and craftsmanship that went into creating these worlds. Or this world, rather. It's kind of like when I did a video about No Man's Sky, and I was talking about the procedurally generated worlds and why that might not be like a great thing. And I think like something like The Witcher 3 makes that point even more kind of sound. Like, it even brings that even more to the forefront. Like, if The Witcher 3 had been procedurally generated, would it make as much sense as it does? In terms of just, it's artificially created, obviously, right? But it feels organic. It feels like a lived-in world. It feels tangible and logical. Like I said before, it feels like a logical like place. And I think, if anything, like that's probably the biggest achievement of The Witcher 3. is that level of world building, like in terms of environment, and the little stories that the world tells you, just by environmental things. So that's going to be something that's like, in this new future, and the new kind of way we're going. I do think we're headed into a largely procedurally generated kind of universe when it comes to like massive RPGs, these open world RPGs, open world games, because people are always going to be craving something new from it. And to me, that's kind of a bummer. I think it's just going to take away some of the craftsmanship in a certain respect. Like, I don't think it's going to happen tomorrow, overnight, but like a decade from now, oh, for sure. I think it's going to be kind of the bog standard in a lot of ways. And obviously by 10 years down the road, they might perfect the system and it might work great. But for me right now, like, just as a person that just appreciates like hard work and intelligent design choices, there's almost nothing like even comes close. Skyrim probably comes a close second, but Skyrim even Skyrim has a little bit of that like sequestered area feeling where it doesn't always feel kind of organic, and for Skyrim that might just have to do with the breadth of the world. You know what I mean? Like the amount of time that it takes to do things. But I think The Witcher 3 just got it right. Just hit it perfectly. And like I said, I think my kind of elongated playtime, like just playing it over the past few months, actually just helped me enjoy that more. It helped me become more immersed in the world, because when I would come back to it, I would spend a lot of time with it. So I was just appreciating all the small stuff. You know what I mean? Like, I never kind of got into that trap of getting bored by kind of the tedium of stuff, because it's a game in a certain vein, so it does have a lot of redundant stuff. It has a lot of repetitive kind of narratives. It has fetch quests. It has all that kind of stuff. But I just was never bored by it, and a lot of times I wasn't bored by it, especially when it comes to, I guess, the side quests and things like that, is because they're really nuanced. Like, they all tell like a little story that's actually like really well thought out. It's very thoughtful. Like, every character, even like the smallest of characters, if you're able to interact with somebody, you kind of feel a history. You feel like they have lived a life and that they have a place in the world and society. And it does it in really subtle ways. It's not like they're not like making grand speeches or giving monologues about who they are and what they do, and you just kind of just get a sense of it from everything from their design to the voice acting to where they're placed in the world, and it just infers like a history. Like, that's another thing about the world; it just feels very lived in. When you go out in the more remote places, like places that are less like lived in, right? Like, it feels that way. It feels like undiscovered country, in a way that I don't think other RPGs have successfully done, these open world RPGs. Like, going back to the Sky, I know I keep going back to Skyrim, but I feel like Skyrim's kind of like that. And while there was, like, the dilapidated castles and all that kind of stuff, but they always were kind of off, like, almost in their own weird little area, almost like their own little zone. So it always did feel like, oh, I'm entering kind of a dilapidated castle area, or I'm entering this cave area. It just felt like, like separate. Like, so it just, like, kind of just broke up the organic feel of traversal. But, like, The Witcher 3 is a more modern game, and it came out more recently, so I guess that's part and parcel, I suppose. But, like, just going back to what I was saying about just, like, the rich history that the game infers, you know what I mean? Like, it does so much without really doing much at all, in terms of, like, directing you to think a certain way. And I really enjoyed that. I enjoyed, like, kind of like this kind of egalitarian approach to morality in the game. Like, it's not asking you or telling you what to feel or what to think. And even when you're in, there's, one of the earlier side quests side quest. It was kind of a side quest. Part of it turns into a side quest. Was the Bloody Baron quest line. The controversial Bloody Baron quest line. like, you know, about this guy who's a wife beater, a womanizer, and treating him like a real human being and not a caricature. Now, you do have a breadth of options of how you want to interact with him. You could be a dick to him. You can try to shame him, or you can be understanding, or you can be neutral. Like, a lot of games do not give you that kind of opportunity to deal with this stuff in an actual, like, nuanced adult way. Well, it's not, obviously, it doesn't have all the breadth of options that you may want in a situation like that, but it definitely felt mature in a really wonderful way. And, like, that's what I have to say about it. Like, I loved about it the most. It is not hand-holding me to make moral decisions. And then it doesn't judge me for the decisions I make. And it doesn't force you to condemn characters because of social mores. And maybe that seems weird to people, I guess. Some people can't deal with that, I suppose. Like, some people find that off-putting, that a game or story, movies, like we see those books, movies, comic books, like, that if the creators do not assign specific, like, morality to it, like, that you're supposed to take from it, people lose their fucking minds. Because that's the thing about when you have, like, when you treat it like a real thing, like a real social issues and stuff like that, you kind of take away what you want to take away from it. And I think that's, like, to the game's credit, like, the most kind of profound thing that it does, narratively. Like, you know, I can't think of another game, honestly, that deals with some of this shit in the way that The Witcher does. I mean, like, there's, you know, the closest thing you can think, comes to mind is, like, you know, there's, like the BioWare stuff, you know, like, I guess, the Mass Effect trilogy, which is not, it doesn't really give you choice. Like, it's either like, oh, you're either nice about it or you're aggressive. And there is no middle ground if you want to have any kind of effect on the situation. And it's very handholdy. Like, that the Paragon Renegade system is incredibly handholdy. It's, like, very much in the same way, like, Telltale kind of holds your hands in very similar ways. They have a very specific thing they want you to get from it, and that's about it. I think, like, The Witcher 3's approach is something I would love to see, like, more modern games kind of go down this path, in terms of, that is really power to the player. That really is power to you. And, like, the fact that it's a mature game in terms of rating, and it allows itself to be a mature game for adults. I think that's really kind of profound in this day and age. And the game, you know, for doing so, caught a lot of shit from people that thought whatever they were going to think about it. And which, the thing is, though, like, when you kind of expose your opinions about this stuff, you're really saying more about you than the game. Because The Witcher, specifically The Witcher 3, is not telling you how to feel about it. It's not giving you that easy way out. It's not being lazy. You know, the point is not to make a point, basically. The point is, like, how would you deal with it? What do you feel about it? That's awesome. That's amazing. That's amazing. And the fact that they're, like, the NPC characters, like, for the quest lines and stuff, that they have, like, this breadth, like I said, this inferred history, there's a breadth to them, and they feel like three-dimensional characters. Like, I can't think of any, like, characters that had any type of significance, even from the small to the large, that felt less than, I suppose. Like, didn't feel, like, well-rounded. And that inferred history by, like, little subtle things, like, you know, the way they dress, where they live, how they treat the people around them, how they treat you, you know, the decisions they've made, how honest they are. You know, it allows you, as the player, to make an informed decision, like you would in real life. That's, like, I don't want to belabor the point, but that's fucking incredible. That's what blew my mind about this game. And going back to the whole, like, you know, kind of antiquated morality systems, I mean, because it's a relatively new thing, right? In the past, like, 5 or 6 years, it's been, like, a big thing. It's existed in some ways in other games, but older than that, you know, like, going back to, like Deus Ex and System Shock and stuff like that. So, you know, it's been there, but I think this is the largest, like, jump forward I've ever seen. I'm really, really excited about it. And that's what and it also doesn't lead you in any direction, like, what the outcome of your decisions are going to be. And I'm talking about just in terms of, like, how you talk and treat other characters. I mean, yeah, there's some gamified stuff where you can kind of see, like, well, if I don't do this for this guy, he's probably not going to like me, you know. But it at least offers you that choice, but it's not telling you, how like the world is going to react to your decisions, because there's usually a ripple effect to some extent. I'm trying to think of his name. There's one character. I remember I've majorly like pissed this guy off. Can't remember him. Yeah, he's like the thuggish brute guy that owns like the bathhouse and stuff. Names escape me at the moment. But like I was just playing. I was answering questions and going about things in a way that like I would. And he's kind of a skeezy dirtbag guy. He's kind of a rough dude who has kind of like a very gray morality, kind of sense of morality about himself and the things he does. He's a justifier. You know what I mean? Like he just justifies everything that he does. I mean, even however honest he is about it, but he does make justifications for why he's not like he's doing what he has to do. And I kind of treated him like shit, and I wasn't super forthcoming, wasn't super honest with him. And then hours later, like it comes back around, and I have to do something with this guy again, and he remembered, and I was taken to task for it, and it negatively affected my my ability to do things in the mission, and that was just cool to see. And it felt organic. Like I keep using that word, but it felt natural. It felt like that's exactly what would happen. You have to give them. I give CD Projekt Red all the credit in the world for that. It's nice to be treated like a fucking grown-ass adult that has their own opinions and has their own way of doing things, has their own personal philosophies and ideologies, and like almost treated with respect. And that's kind of the saddest part about kind of it was the mini smear campaign for The Witcher 3. Talking, I mean, it went from everything from, well, this game might be like subtly racist and misogynist or misogynistic, and to this game supports rape culture, like all these, and these are all from major outlets, which is even more baffling it's just I guess this is such a larger discussion. Maybe I'll have to do a video about how I feel about just games journalism in general. That would probably be a good topic. I have a wide breadth of opinion on it. But it's pretty nuanced, though. I'll give it that. But that was really disappointing, and like I said before, like it really says more about the writers and how the writers feel just about life in general than it actually anything to do with the game or the game creators. I think it's like some of the things that were said were incredibly irresponsible. It lacked nuance. It lacked like maturity. But that it's kind of just the way that industry is it has been going. It's kind of always been like that. But anyways, that's something I'll talk about another day, I suppose. I don't want to bog this too much down with like socio-political bullshit that goes on the internet. We all act like it fucking matters, but it doesn't. It doesn't really matter. But that was just like, it's not something I heard a lot of people talking about, I suppose, is like the subtlety and the nuance of characterizations and the empowering, like intellectually empowering angle that the game had. You know, usually when we play games, it's all about, you know, the power of the player just means like, oh, well, you know, we're super strong and we have cool swords and abilities and we're able to kill monsters and bad guys and we can empower ourselves through skill trees and excuse me, and you know, and that's usually where the conversation ends. It doesn't always go to this other place, and I really wish people would kind of, I don't know, put their personal ideologies aside for a little bit and just like appreciate what's actually there and the work that's gone into it, like the subtleties of it, how responsible this game is when it talks about, even when it talks about sexuality and like. That's something I was talking about earlier, you know, at the front of the video, about how it deals with sex politics and just casual sex and relationships and stuff. It is a huge, well, first of all, it's a huge step forward the way it's treated in this, specifically in this series. I mean, you're no longer collecting fucking playing cards or, you know, sex cards for all your conquests, and it's not as tongue-in-cheek as it was in The Witcher 2, it's still lighthearted and some of it will still make you laugh and whatnot, but there was actual consequences to kind of the way you approach things. Now, I said it earlier, I'm going to talk about some spoilers and stuff like that. This would be a spoiler. So, like, you have the two women from the series and that are in this game represented, Yennefer and Triss. Now, when I played, I'm not familiar with kind of the lore. I've never read the books or whatever. And my most recent experience with the Witcher series was The Witcher 2. And kind of Triss is your main gal in The Witcher 2. So I was kind of inclined to romance Triss, right? But then I spent a lot of time with Yennefer. And I really liked Yennefer. But the thing was, they gave me the opportunity to romance Triss first. So I already kind of wooed her. And then, without even thinking, and this is actually a negative about playing the game and kind of broken up over a few months, is I kind of like forgot about it in a certain way because Triss hadn't been in the narrative for a while, and I was focused on Yennefer and their history and stuff like that. So, so I ended up like kind of accidentally because like wooing Jennifer or not Yennefer, because like I was in the moment, vibing with Yennefer, from a narrative standpoint, and I just didn't want to be a dick. That was part of it. I was like, that was one time where I felt like the options were a little limited. Like, how can I get out of this without having this woman hate me? And there really was no way. It was either kind of like you give her the cold shoulder, or you woo her. You end up with her. So that's what I ended up doing. I ended up being with her. And lo and behold, by the last like eighth of the game or whatever, like justice was served, man. Triss and Yennefer, obviously they're friends. They know each other. They got together, and they tie old Geralt to a bed and leave him there. It was really funny, and the thing was, it actually closed like any type of like affectionate things you could do for the rest of the game. They're like, nope, we've both decided Geralt's a piece of shit, and we're moving on with our lives. And I was like, good on you. Good on you. Just kind of, it was just something like that, but that just goes back to that whole thing where it actually gives you kind of logical consequence to your actions. That would be an example of that. And well, just speaking of the women of The Witcher 3, that's another thing that, was brought up a lot. It was kind of shit on for being misogynistic because of what NPCs would yell at Ciri while she was, like, running away from them or whatever in the short times you get to play as Ciri. Yeah, they would yell bitch and cunt and all this stupid, just, gross misogynist shit. Like, just stupid shit. Like, obviously, they don't fucking like her. But I guess for some reason, people just equated that to, like, the voice of the developers. Totally bizarre, totally unfounded, but there it was, right? Like I said, it says more about the people that write these things than it does actually about the game itself. But, like, some of the most, like, because I got married, I've been married for a year, I have 2 little sisters, I have a mother, and I see them deal with, really stupid shit because of, like, being women and stuff like that. Not in the perverse, gross way a lot of people, it's not quite the epidemic levels that may be called out sometimes, but, like, I've seen it. You see hints of it. Of course you do. Like, of course it's there. Especially when you're talking about just, things are somewhat male-dominated at the moment. Granted, there's a huge shift happening in all different areas. I mean, fuck, most of my life, I've either worked with women or for women, like, to one degree or another. Most of the jobs I've had. And, I don't know, it's fine. Like, I never really thought anything about it until I was older and, like, kind of, I guess, like, people bring up, like, kind of gender politics and stuff like that. But anyways, so I see that kind of stuff in the world, and, like, there is real things to talk about, and it's really a shame that, like, when you actually have really, like, positive, like, female, whether you can play them or not, like, female characters, they just totally discount everything, like, about them. Yeah, and just like every other character in this game, it's incredibly equal. Incredibly, it's like an egalitarian approach. They feel like they are real people. They have histories. They have their own opinions. They're just as much like warriors and fighters as Geralt. Triss, Yennefer, and Ciri are like, I don't know, understand why they're not like poster childs for, I guess, like modern female empowerment. Like with these things, they should be held up on like pedestals. If that's what your argument's going to be, if that's what like the things you want to discuss about like the problems with video games and stuff like that, why can't you like give them any respect at all? Like they just discount them because they're not the player character. Really bizarre. And like even the most like progressive of people I've seen like on Twitter and stuff like that, like most progressive, and I say that in quotes, like I say that like kind of sarcastically, like don't like think Yennefer's a bitch. Like I don't understand that. Like I never got that. Like I liked Yennefer. Like yeah, she's her own person. She's strong-willed and like doesn't take shit from people and does what she wants to do. Like okay, you know, whatever. Doesn't feel like she's going to allow herself to be a victim or mistreated. Like, and that's another thing about all the women in The Witcher. Like, whether or not you ever have to help them or save them, they're never victims. They're never damsels. Never. Not a single fucking time. Never. Like, you know, like, you have to take shit so far out of context to get that out of, like, this game. You would. Like, just like the Bloody Baron, like in terms of like dealing with like kind of what could be a controversial subject, to deal with it with maturity and nuance, and that's really impressive. That's impressive. This might be, in my opinion, the most narratively impressive game I've ever played in terms of giving the player actually a feeling of agency and respecting your intelligence. I don't think you can, like, I know I'm kind of going on and on about it, but, like, it really, just every time the thought pops in my head, blows me away. It fucking blows me away. And I know I was supposed to talk about fucking mechanics first, and I ended up not talking about it. But, you know, a lot of things with The Witcher, and which I will say is both a good and a bad thing, it is part of this patch culture that we have with modern games, and CD Projekt Red has been really done their due diligence and have really been there trying to support their game and fix the little problems that it's had. You know, because it's a big open world game. It's really hard to, you know, QA test or play test like games like this in totality. So there's always, once a few million people get their hands on it, you're gonna find things. But I've always been really super quick to address any problems people have had. In a myriad of different ways, from everything from bug glitches to the way the UI works. Like, so they're listening to people, like people with valid complaints. They're listening to them, and they're kind of doing some good work. It's for a major release for a game as big as The Witcher 3 has become. I'm not sure if people kind of realized it. I don't even think they would realize it would be kind of the runaway hit it is, but. Because Witcher 2 is, you know, it has fans, but it was kind of stuck on PC and then 360. But it was not; they weren't huge games. They're the bigger games. They're not huge games. Witcher 3 has become, from what I see, is a little bit of a phenomenon. And but they're listening to valid criticisms. If anything, you know, they're trying to address kind of the way Geralt, even the way he moves. People think he's too floaty, too loose, which is a design choice, and they didn't even do away with the design choice. The thing they did is they added an option. You have the option. You can have a very kind of tightly controlled Geralt, or you can go with what they kind of wanted, the more free-flowing, realistic movement Geralt. Just stuff like little things like that. Like, awesome. The only negative I'll say about that, and this is part of why I would take time off of the game, they were always announcing new fucking patches. And from my perspective, like, I want to play the best version of the game possible. So if a new patch is going to come out and they announce it, like, a couple weeks before it happens, like, hey, we're working on a patch to solve all these problems, then I'll probably just wait for the patch. Which sucks. Maybe it's a necessary evil in the day and age we live in, but it sucks. I'm like, I'd give a little bit more leeway to something like this than I would to, say, like, I don't know, like a first-person shooter for sure, which historically they don't often have tons of problems other than Battlefield. But I like Battlefield, so I'm not going to dog them on. But it kept me kind of from continuing to play the game. And actually, I would keep playing the game right now, but they announced another patch, the 1.08, that's going to add New Game Plus, which is fucking awesome. I kind of just wish it was there already. I probably would have restarted that motherfucker right away. But now I'm waiting for New Game Plus. So it's always kind of keeps me waiting, and that's a negative thing in my opinion. Like I said, maybe a necessary evil. I give kind of open world games a little bit more of a pass on it than I will other games. They're fucking like travesties, you know. I even like Arkham Knight, which I have not played, and I did not pre-order it because of all the DLC bullshit. Like I'm not supporting that. I'm not pre-ordering games anymore. Well, I take that back. I pre-ordered Metal Gear Solid 5, The Phantom Pain, because I'm buying that regardless. And also, it was just a way to make sure I actually could pay it off. I could buy it, so. But, yeah, I don't believe in really pre-ordering games. I don't give a shit about some fucking skin pack that I might get. Like, that, I don't care. I think it's really gross when they start, like, cutting off, like, story stuff to, like, so that you go pre-order a fucking game. And then Arkham Knight's even more egregious because most of the story stuff sucks, and it's about, you know, anywhere from 20 minutes to an hour long. So you're not even getting, like, a good piece of content. And it's a lot, I think it's all separated from, like, the main narrative of the game in a way that's just like, well, here's what happened before. I just give two shits. But anyways, I'll play Arkham Knight. I'm going to play it, you know, a year from now. But when it comes out in Game of the Year edition, because I'll have all that shit and I'll buy it for $50. It'll be great. And, you know, I'll have the whole game and I won't have to pay $100 for it. But anyways, speaking of DLC and stuff like that, and pre-order bonuses and stuff, CD Projekt Red did not do that bullshit. Not only do they have respect for your mind as a player while you're playing the game, they have respect for you as a fucking consumer and a person who doesn't want to get nickeled and dimed. So they release 16 pieces of free DLC. The last piece of DLC is actually going to be part of the patch. It's the New Game Plus mode. And they all range from just armor sets to different alternate outfits for Yennefer, Triss, and Ciri, which are like kind of more like sexy outfits, I guess you call them. I think they look dumb, so I don't use them. In fact, one time, they were turned on, and I was like, and I saw like the new outfits, and I was like, what the fuck? Like, I don't want this. It's not my Witcher world. Like, I don't want that. So I saved it, and I turned it off, and I had to restart the game. But whatever. So that's a really stupid aside. But just they offered all that stuff, these little things that normally would be like bonus DLC for pre-orders, or that they would sell you for $1 or $2, like skin packs and extra little side quests and stuff like that, which are just as, I guess, large and profound as a normal side quest. You know? Like, so you'll get an hour for each of them. I think there was like 4 or 5 of them in there. Maybe like 4. I think so. But, you know, a lot of stuff like that, even like the haircut, beard styling stuff, most publishers would charge you for that. CD Projekt Red didn't. It's really awesome. And they've come out and talked about their expansion and kind of been defending themselves a little bit because they don't, you know, because they don't want to seem hypocritical because they don't believe in like bonus DLC and stuff like that in the same, or being used the same way. And they're like, well, you know, we're charging $25 for like these 2 expansion packs, and it'll be about as big as The Witcher 2. That's a lot of content for $25. I am a total mark for it now. Like, having finished the game, I am really looking forward to the expansions. I'm buying them. I'm gonna buy them. Just because more Witcher 3 is good to me, first of all, and because I think they're gonna have enough respect for me they're selling me something that will be worth my time. Also, like, so I've trust in the developer that I don't have for other developers, or it's most of the time you're not really talking about developers, you're talking about publishers. The publishers push this shit, which is even actually kind of funny considering that it was developed by CD Projekt Red, but it's published by Warner Brothers, who also did Arkham Knight, and just to see how gross, that's like a great juxtaposition. Like, it's a great, like, argument, counter argument for like just how this stuff is treated and handled in general. And I guarantee you that was just that was a Warner Brothers thing. But like, I'm assuming, I guess Rocksteady just didn't give enough pushback on it, or maybe they don't care. Like, or and also like their team is way different than CD Projekt Red. CD Projekt Red is a very kind of a small, contained like situation, so they have more control over their stuff. Arkham Knight is like, I can't even imagine how many people worked on that fucking game. So you do have artists, you do have people you need to pay and try to keep on payroll. So I get it. You have to and it sucks that they're in positions where they just have to justify their existence to a certain extent. It's gross. It's gross, like kind of corporatism at its best, right? And that's why like corporate structures do not belong in the arts at all. And it's because it's unnecessary. It is driven by, on the corporate side of it, it's totally driven by greed. Like they don't need it. Like they're not going to make that much more money on it. I can't imagine. Although $40 for DLC, even if 30 to 40% of the people actually buy that stuff, which I've seen a lot of people bought it. That they're going to turn some kind of profit for pretty minimal cost to themselves, But yeah, Witcher 3 is great. It's probably my favorite game of the year so far, for sure. That might be overtaken by Metal Gear Solid 5 Phantom Pain, but I will be totally honest, like, I am super biased. I am total mark for that game. Even though the mechanics of it and, like, the actual gameplay look amazing, looks like a lot of fun, I'm going to love that game probably regardless, honestly. Like, as long as that story is satisfactory, which I can't imagine it's not going to be. Like, because I am totally, like, willing to just suspend my disbelief and go with whatever Kojima wanted to do. Like, that's exciting to me. Which I talked about it, I did a video a little while ago about Metal Gear Solid 5 and fan theories and stuff like that, how much fun they are and blah, blah, blah. But, yeah, I think, like, The Witcher is not only a good game, it comes from a good developer that has respect for its consumers and people that buy the game. I mean, I said this in my other video, but they put a thank you note in the fucking box for the game. Like, it's amazing. It's amazing. It's a little thing. It's stupid, right? But it makes all the difference in the world. It doesn't make me feel special or anything like that. But it shows me, like, just their attitude and their candor it's something I just have the utmost. I just respect them, and I'll be on board to support them in the future now. Like, I'm totally into CD Projekt Red now, and especially with their, like, what is it? It's like having some it's like a steampunk 2077 or something like that. They're coming out. They have a new IP coming out. They actually recently said they're gonna be giving The Witcher a rest for a little while they work on other stuff. But we won't even see anything about it, I think, this steampunk 2077 until I think the end of next year or something like that, or maybe 2017 will be like the earliest you'll see anything about it. So it'll probably come out in 2017, I'm assuming. But yeah, but I'm excited for the future for the developer, especially like if this is the kind of design philosophies they have and like artistic choices they make in terms of narrative. Like, super excited. And just at the end of this, I don't know how other people felt, but like, just all these Witcher games, it's all about just kind of consequence choice. That's a big part of the game. And so there's multiple different endings, and I got what I felt was a really good ending for my Witcher, like for my playthrough. And it actually makes me excited to go back through the game and kind of maybe play slightly differently and see how things turn out for me. I definitely know I'm not going to try to get with both Yennefer and Triss, but like, I'm not going to do that again. But like, it was really great. Like, and it makes my ending totally made logical sense. I thought it was actually the best place for all the characters. Basically, my Geralt ends up alone, kind of just continuing on being a Witcher. Ciri goes back to her father to kind of take her place by his side of the throne, and she does it for great reasons, thinking like, if I want to make a change in the world, maybe this is my way to do it. I have access to all this power and this platform. maybe I should actually try to do good in the world. Yennefer and Triss totally abandoned me. But they off doing their own thing, their own adventures. Like, it's just, so for me, like, it was a really good ending. And I'm looking forward to, I didn't go and look through to see what the other endings were yet. I might break, but I kind of wanted to just play it again once more through without kind of knowing how it could turn out other ways. But, I have not heard of anybody feeling like they were shortchanged by the ending or anything like that, like any of the various endings people might have gotten. I think they seem very, like, true to the way, the decisions you made. That's kind of the biggest compliment I can give it. It's more impactful than anything I've played in a Telltale game or anything like that, because I actually felt like my light touch on that world and how the story turned out. Even though you only kind of have a light touch, I mean, everything's finite to a certain extent, but I at least felt satisfied, And going back to Mass Effect 3, I didn't have the problems that other people had with it, but I just thought it was a bad ending. It was just not satisfying at all. And a lot of that had to do with the fact that I felt like nothing I did really mattered. In The Witcher 3, I actually felt like some of the things I did and decisions I made actually mattered. So it was nice. But yeah, go play The Witcher 3. If you haven't played it, go play it. It's fucking great. Anything I've said, I could spoil the whole game for you. It would still be totally worth your time. That journey is very much so worth going on. It's great. It's great. All right. I'm Shaun. I've been talking for almost 50 minutes now about The Witcher, which I wanted to do. You have a good day, everybody. I'll talk to you guys next time I got something to talk about.